months.
I am going to record this so then we can post it up so anybody who couldn't join us today is able to view it later, or if you're here and you want to go back and re-listen to something, I will get this posted up on the Vermont Landlord Association YouTube channel. I'll try to do that faster than I have been, like maybe this afternoon. So it's up there quickly because this is pretty time sensitive information we're talking about today.
Absolutely. To our guests, and we'll remind this everyone again, we encourage people to use the question and answers, ask questions. The more interactive this is, the better for everyone. And what an interesting time. So we'll probably wait another minute, but just to reintroduce, my name is Brian Armstrong, and I'm with Keller Williams Vermont and the Strongwill Real Estate team at Keller Williams Vermont, as well as Strongwill Property Management. Encourage you to check us out, like us, let us know how we can help you. It has been an honor and a privilege to partner with the Vermont Landlords Association and Angela Zakowski. I strongly recommend any apartment owner, any real estate agent who's working with investors, connect with Angela and her amazing organization, sign up. It's worth every single penny. It's a tax deduction. And, if you follow her lessons, suggestions, and the mistakes that she's learned from other people, she could save you a lot of money.
Thank you, Brian. No, nothing is foolproof in this business. I think that's sort of my global takeaway, but there's definitely steps and things that landlords can do to reduce their risk and to reduce their chances of running into an issue. Like Brian said, I am the director of the Vermont Landlords Association. I'm also a practicing attorney, so I bring sort of that layer of knowledge and experience to the table and have a pretty good understanding of the court process and how that works in terms of evictions. So pretty well-rounded resource for landlords over at the association. And what an interesting 15 months it's been. So.
It has, and my guess is it'll be at least another interesting next 6 months, potentially a year.
Yeah.
And in the last, 48 hours, we've been told the apocalypse is ending, that all COVID restrictions are gone. I've been on Church Street. I've seen people walking. It's, talking. It's great to see things come to life. Yet for so many of us that are chiming in today, we've still got challenges ahead. And it's going to be an interesting next few months.
So I think why don't we go ahead and get started? And as I've mentioned before, we do record this and I do post these up on the Vermont Landlords Association YouTube channel. So if you missed part of it, or you have to leave early, or you want to hear it again, or you couldn't make it today, the information will still be available to you.
Angela, should I start just updating a little bit of people on the multifamily market, what's happening? Because I know you're getting questions. I'm getting a ton of questions.
Yeah, no, I think that would be helpful if you could give us just a quick sense and update of what's going on out there.
Absolutely. All right, so everybody, these statistics are a program that I use all the time. I help our real estate clients and customers, and it extrapolates data from MLS. So it does not include some unrepresented sellers. And the batch I pulled today was the entire state of Vermont, as well as solely for multifamily. So this does not include single family rentals. And I encourage anybody, again, reach out to us and we'll be more than happy to get you some stats that are specific to your city, state, or area. But right now, in a 2 years, month over month, the median price of the multifamily that have sold in Vermont are up 100%. So it's gone from 2 years ago at the end of May 19, the median price across the state was 120. Certainly, that's a little bit different in Burlington. But right now, as of the end of May 21, it was 240,000. So we've definitely seen some tightening. As people can imagine, we have a lot of people moving to Vermont. And I would argue that the people moving to Vermont are starting to bring their investment dollars to Vermont as well. We're not tax advisors, but I would encourage any investor on this call or agent, listen to the chatter about 1031 tax deferred exchanges. There's some talk that they may limit them for people with income above 400. So if you're thinking of cashing out in the next few years, it may be good to talk to us about how we could help you on that. So right now, again, the median price month over month in a 2-year snapshot was up 100%, pretty significant. Supply and demand. Now, this is actually an interesting one as well. At the end of May 19, there was 373 multifamilies for sale in the state through the multiple listing service. It actually declined 19%. Now, if you're looking at a single family or condo market, this number would actually probably be a decline of inventory, probably or available for sale, probably in the 40 percentile. Yet, a staggering statistic, under contract, again, May 21 versus May 19, is up 130%. Pretty significant, jump. Now, the amount sold, not quite as high, but is up 29.7%. So it's certainly, an excellent market for sellers. I would argue buyers, because of the interest rates, certainly it depends which pocket you're going to buy in, Burlington, Rutland, Barry, Montpelier. It's going to vary a little bit for your objectives. Now, to me, one of the most important indicators as a 30-year professional in the industry is months supply of inventory. Backdrop. If there's 5 to 6 months supply of inventory, meaning that hypothetically, if no new seller came to market, it would take 5 to 6 months to sell everything, you would have a balanced market. If that number went up 7 or 8, it's more of a buyer's market. Right now, across the entire state, multifamily properties only, there is a 3.2 months supply of inventory. So it is without a doubt a seller's market. Now, I'll pause right there. Comparison, single family and condo across the state, below 500, there's a 0.9 months supply of inventory. 500 and above, single family, there's a 1.9 months supply of inventory. So certainly more inventory in the multifamily market. That being said, still very much in favor of the sellers. Where if you look at the average over the last 2 years, it's been an average of 8 months. So you can see it's steadily declined. And then days on market right now across the entire state, at least in May, of what sold was 100 or just under 199 days, versus you'd probably see somewhere around 30 to 45 on single families. So if you folks are thinking of selling, or if you're tired of getting in the business, definitely talk with us, see what we can do to help. It's a great time to talk. And again, watch your 1031 chatter, because that amazing tool is being discussed. So I encourage you, talk with your representatives, send notes to your senators. And Angela, if you've got any questions of the market.
And Brian, just to chime in, that would be your federal representatives and senators. So your state representatives and senators aren't going to be able to do anything about the discussions happening on 1031 exchanges. That's a federal issue and a federal tax code and guideline.
Well, I may actually segue with the foreclosures before we get into the to the evictions. As I understand it, I believe it's June 30th that the moratorium on foreclosure ends. First, there is some small chatter, not a lot, but I saw 1 or 2 articles in preparing for today's meeting that talked about the potentiality of the foreclosure, being extended into 22. The reason why they would do this is to avoid the 06, 07, 08, 09 flood of foreclosures, concerns about rising homelessness. Now, our real estate team actually deals with Housing and Urban Development, USDA, and Veterans Administration's foreclosures. We can tell you that we are seeing not a wave, but we are seeing a steady amount build up. And right now, the few foreclosures we're seeing go to market are actually oftentimes reverse mortgages where somebody has passed, turned a deed in lieu of. But I do see or think that you will see a small increase in inventory in the multifamily market, both as foreclosures and the eviction moratoriums come to an end. And with that, Angela, what's going
Yeah.
on? We've been delivered a
So
Christmas
I
present.
know we'll see. So I'm going to touch briefly on the foreclosure issue that Brian was just talking about. So the June 30th date, that's a federal eviction moratorium, or excuse me, foreclosure moratorium. So there is also a state foreclosure moratorium. It's the same bill and it's the same criteria as the eviction moratorium. So the Vermont foreclosure moratorium is going to come to an end in the middle of July, July 16th, actually, to be exact. But as Brian mentioned, the federal government may decide to extend their foreclosure moratorium longer. So this has been sort of the challenge all along, as we have state requirements and regulations, and we have federal government requirements related to both evictions and foreclosures. And so sometimes they match, sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's super confusing which one is in effect and which one is not. So, you know, all things to be aware of, but like anything that we've been telling you over the last year plus, this is the information we have right now. All of this could change later this afternoon or tomorrow. Probably not as likely that we're going to see it change that quickly anymore. But just, you know, be aware. Vermont has restarted its mortgage assistance program through Vermont Housing Finance Agency. So if you're in need of assistance with mortgage payments or know folks who are, that program has restarted again. So there is financial help there for homeowners who need assistance.
Angela, if I may, one of the common misnomers, I know we're not going to talk all about foreclosure today, but one of the common misnomers is that the people in forbearance can just add it to the end of their mortgage.
Not
Most of it is when the forbearance ends, give us all those
depends. It
months.
depends on what the arrangement you had with your bank was and what kind of mortgage you have. So mortgages are super complicated, and there's all different kinds and there's all different terms. And just if you're in forbearance or you had some arrangement to not make payments, just make sure you understand what it means when that ends, because some mortgages have the payments added at the end. Some require that when it ends, you then have to make a payment of all of the ones you missed. Like there's a lot of different rules and regulations in that realm. So just, you know what you signed up for and know what to expect, because it may not be what you thought. So the big, I guess, news or information why lots of you were here today: the governor has ended the state of emergency in Vermont related to the COVID pandemic. And why is that important? Well, the eviction moratorium was tied and is tied to the state of emergency. So with the ending of the state of emergency, we now know when evictions in the court are going to be able to restart. So what I've been telling landlords is, if you've been sitting on a situation, you haven't sent your tenants notice because you didn't know when the court process was going to start, now is the time to make sure you have termination notices out, that you are ready, that you're getting prepared. Because for all eviction cases, the moratorium is going to be lifting July 16th. So that means non-payment cases, no cause cases are going to be able to proceed forward on July 16th. And if you had a case that was already in process when the courts and the state shut down in March of last year, there's different restart things that are going to happen. So that's a situation where you need to reach out to your attorney, if you have an attorney, find out what the next steps are, because from what I'm seeing, it's almost going to be handled on sort of a court by court basis. So say, for instance, in Washington County, I have already started to receive status conference notices of hearing for pending eviction cases that I have. So these are cases that were started before the pandemic. So the court's already starting to schedule those, and the status conference is just parties show up, court says, what's the status, what's happening here, what needs to happen next. So for at least one county, those are already getting scheduled at this point.
That's actually really good. That surprises me.
Yeah, well, the court's been looking at this. They know that it was coming. They've been trying to plan because we have two sort of bodies and sets of cases to deal with. We have all of the eviction cases that were pending and had been filed at the time the court shut down. So in March of last year. So we have that whole group. We have a group, all the cases that have been filed from March to now. And then we have sort of new cases that are going to come in. It's that bunch of new cases coming in that no one really has a good sense of what that number is going to be and sort of what the impact to the judiciary is going to be. We do know right now that there's about 2/3 less cases pending right now than there is normally. So, we keep hearing a lot about, oh, the backlog. Well, there's a huge number of cases, less cases than normal. So, we don't know what the influx is going to be, but, the court's trying to be very efficient in terms of getting caught up, getting cases back on track, getting things moved forward that need to be moved forward. Many of the courts are still now in doing virtual hearings. I think we'll start to see that slowly transition over and transition back to in-person hearings. But for now, everything's being held on a platform called WebEx, which is very similar to Zoom. It's like the court version of Zoom. So just, be prepared for that. For folks who are out of state or have to travel a long distance to court, it's not actually a bad thing. It makes it a little bit more efficient for certain types of hearings. So if you had a pending case, getting sort of circling back around there, if you had a pending case, it'd start checking in with your attorney. Chances are nothing's going to happen in that case till after July 16th, right? Because the court can't take any action on these cases till after July 16th. But as you see, at least one county is starting to get ready in anticipation of the moratorium lifting. Now, there is a little exemption or exception within the moratorium law or statute, which was if your case was for breach of lease, you're able to proceed right now.
Interesting.
Yeah. So you didn't, well, we did that because those breach cases can be, or that was a recommendation to the legislature because those breach cases are challenging, right? Those are the ones that are creating sort of chaos in the building. Maybe you didn't quite meet the high standard to proceed forward as, the moratorium was in effect. And some cases did get to go forward under the moratorium. So maybe it didn't quite reach that level. But I think we all know that those situations where you're having violations, you're trying to deal with issues, damage, noise, smoking, loud parties, people not following the rules, those have a huge impact on the property, on neighbors and other tenants. And so the idea was, look, those cases need to go first and just get started and allow some relief. Yeah.
It makes sense. Angela, we've got a great question. James, great to have you on. Great pics of the sailing with a kid, by the way, on Facebook. Are these cases being handled in order? Or is this going to be like the deli line? I've got number 39, or is this going to be mayhem?
I think I probably wouldn't describe it as mayhem.
Mayhem.
Right. But what I think is going to happen in terms of scheduling, those cases that were pending back in March when the court shut down and then the moratorium went into effect, those are the ones that the court's really trying to get a sense of where are things. And if, I know as an attorney, I had a couple of cases that were actually scheduled for final hearings, like at the end of March. So like everything was ready to go. We were ready to come in to just wrap up the case. I would anticipate that those are going to be sort of first on the schedule after a status conference, right? Because a lot's changed in many of those cases in the last 15 months. People have moved. Some issues were solved with the rental housing stabilization program, so the rent money that was in 2020. Some more things are getting solved with the new VERAP program, which is the new rental assistance program. So part of the impetus for the courts scheduling these status conferences is to also for the court to assess where cases are, what needs to happen, who needs to get in the door. And, for many of these cases, the defendant or the tenant hasn't even gotten served yet. So they don't even know that there's a court case pending against them, and they won't know till they get served. So, any case that's in that situation, nothing's going to happen until service, and then it'll sort of follow the normal rules for an eviction, with the defendant being given, the time frame they need to answer and respond to the court paperwork. So,
Angela, I just thought of a question. Respecting that, the people that we value that deal with this, sheriffs, are going to be, they're probably going to be super busy in the next, couple of weeks.
Yep.
Do we have to have it, serviced through or served through a sheriff?
Yeah,
Or I can't
you
do
do.
it, huh?
So
I
that's
was
a
gonna get an Uber driver to do it.
I know that's a standard what's called a civil procedure rule. So
Okay.
because evictions are a standard civil lawsuit, like any other type of civil case, contract dispute, medical malpractice, like anything like that, that type of case requires starting and served by sheriff on the defendant. So yeah, it does, you're stuck in there. I mean, my experience is most of the sheriffs are pretty efficient. They're pretty good. They're used to handling volume. Remember, we're 2/3 less cases right now in the court system than are normally pending at any given time for evictions. So in terms of volume, the sheriff's departments have not been handling the volume that they normally do. Now, can we predict what the influx is going to be? No. So that's sort of the wild card for everybody, the court system, the sheriff's department, attorneys' offices who handle these types of cases. We're kind of unsure. But if you haven't sent a notice yet, you're not really even ready to file a case. So if you haven't sent termination notices, if you've been waiting, like I said, now is the time to go with a couple of caveats. So if you're in a situation where your tenants haven't paid rent and they're not applying to the VERAP program to get help with their rent, there is an old holdover provision from some federal laws that were passed last year in 2020 that require non-payment notices to be at least 30 days. It's 30 days for what they define as covered properties. It's very complicated to figure out if your property is a covered property or not. And the amount of time and effort it takes to show that you're not a covered property, just send the 30-day notice.
So you're saying that forget about the 14-day notices that we're used to, just consider it 30.
Yep, for non-payment of rent for right now in the foreseeable future, just please send 30-day non-payment of rent notices, because it will make your life so much easier down the road. It will make your attorney's life so much easier down the road, and it will take some arguments off the table. So you're not going to have to spend time in the case spinning your wheels about whether or not you're a covered property. So just the prudent approach at this point, 30-day non-payment notices, just to make sure you're in compliance with that federal requirement from last year. And hopefully at some point that federal requirement will go away, but as of right now, it is not. It's still in effect. So
we've got another great question. I was going to actually ask you about buyouts, which is my favorite way. No disrespect to an amazing attorney who's running this. So we have it for Doreen Phillips. Doreen, great to have you on as well. Thanks for your time today. I have a potential client, parentheses landlord, who has had a case for over a year. Tenant has paid zero.
Yep.
Landlord has not accepted, assistant funds, and tenant has now become a major problem. Moving in people, breaking into the utility room. Will the court look favorably on adding breach of lease, which I think you said they would, police have been called numerous times to due to damage. Lawyer has not advocated for amending the case.
Okay. Well, I mean, so if you have a pending case and there's a lawyer involved, like I can't comment on that, right? Because I don't have all the paperwork. I don't have all of the facts. And, I'm happy to have a conversation with that particular attorney if it makes sense, if they want. But I can't comment on specific cases. What I will say is, in order for you to be able to proceed on a breach of lease type situation right now, you need to have had a notice to that effect, and it has to be a part of your eviction case. So if you haven't already sent a breach of lease notice, that's a 30-day notice. So by the time you would get that notice out the door, you'd be at the end of the moratorium for all of the other types of cases. So it may not make sense right now to take that type of step if you haven't already got that paperwork in place, just from a purely timing standpoint. So it's, I think we kind of maybe had a sense that the state of emergency was going to come to an end June 15th, but like so many things, until it actually happens, you can't really plan and you can't really say, yes, this is happening, because I've been wrong so many times in so many months over the last 15 months about what might be coming down the pipeline. Until we actually saw it. And this is how far it's gotten, right? On Monday, when the governor said he was letting the state of emergency expire, and then 2 sentences later, he said, and I will be issuing executive orders to fill in some edges. I went, oh my gosh, I hope there's nothing in there about evictions and housing, because that's where we've been for like the last 15 months, is that there's always something else. The good news is there was nothing in there related to evictions and housing. I did go look, because that's what I do, and why I wake up in the middle of the night many nights. So, it looks like we're ready to go for those cases that need to go forward. So, get ready. If, your tenants owe you rent, or the lease is up and you haven't taken any action, that's the no cause notice. Get those notices out the door, because you're going to be able to push them forward and pursue them now where you couldn't previously. And so then this gets me to the VERAP program, which is launching. Landlords are getting paid. It has been slow to get off of the ground.
Here's my manners, Angela.
Yeah.
We got one more question on that last topic. So
yes,
thanks for
certainly.
letting me. And Laura Wilson, great to have you on as well. Can we file with the court a non-renewal notice that we have previously issued over the last few months?
Well, it depends. So termination notices are good for 60 days from the termination date. So it depends on when that termination date was. If you're within that 60-day window, I would file that case right now to preserve that notice. You can file. You've always been able to file with the court through this whole moratorium. You could send notices and file with the court. It's just once it hit the court, it stopped completely. So you'd need to go take a look at the notice and see when that termination date was. If you're beyond the 60-day window, you will need to resend that notice before the case can get filed. So it depends. But if you already have sent notices and they've come due, you can file those cases now. You still can. It can't go further than filing until July 16th.
And great point, Angela. And before, if I may, and don't hesitate to say now, let's keep going. I just like to let everybody know that I've had personally significant success as a property manager in getting tenants out with buyouts. Now, I can't, and Angela, has had people give me a call after, how do you do it? And when I explain it, they're like, wow, that's simple. I will tell you, it's simple in theory. Never underestimate, and any KW agent knows what I'm about to say. Never underestimate practicing the dialogue. I use something right out of Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference, who's a FBI hostage negotiator, wrote a great book on negotiations. And I'll do an accusation audit where I share all the reasons how the tenants could fight it, how they could drag it out. And then I do a tactical pause and then a thought shifting question. But Mr. and Mrs. Tenant, you'll agree this is going to end. So the question is, how do you want it to end? Do you want to wait to a sheriff for 45 minutes? Or do you want to consider potentially a buyout agreement? Now, those buyout agreements I've seen from $1,000. Actually, lowest I ever did was $650. Most I ever did was $1,000. I do know it during the apocalypse, as I'll jokingly refer to it. I've seen $5,000 buyouts refused. And I've even seen, I believe, a $10,000 buyout as part of an $800,000 real estate transaction to get a tenant out. But if you do wish to do the buyouts, first and foremost, again, contact Angela so that she gets you the right forms, make sure we can use it in court or you can use it in court. And again, don't go in there and just start barking at them. At the end is here, take this or get that. It's not going to work. Got to use accusation audits, tactical silence, and a thought shifting question.
Diplomacy.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'll try to shut up for a little bit.
No, that's okay. Actually, that leads in very nicely to the types of things that are available under the VERAP program. So the VERAP program is the Vermont Emergency Rental Assistance Program. It is the new rental assistance setup that we have now. Yes, it is a lot different from the one in 2020. Yes, it requires tenant participation. It requires tenant income information. I'm also here to tell you, Vermont did not design this program, right? The Vermont program was the one we had in 2020. We would have loved to continue running the 2020 program. The federal government said, here's this money, here's your program, this is how you have to run it. So these are all federally mandated requirements. So all of these hoops you have to jump through, all of the paperwork that goes with this is not, it's not Vermont, federal government. That being said, there's a lot of money, $100 million for rental assistance right now, and there's more coming. Like that's just group one of rental assistance. So how do you manage this system? I'm going to screen share real quick because I think it's helpful for people to see some of this. So the Vermont State Housing Authority is administering this program like they did the 2020 program. And you would go to this website, so ERAP at vsha.org, or you can get to it just from the Vermont State Housing Authority homepage. And up here is where you can find all of the information about the program. Questions, there's Q&As, you can get to the tenant portal, you can get to the landlord portal. What we're going to focus on is the landlord side of things in the landlord portal. So new, this is brand new within the last week. The landlord can now pre-start the application for the tenant. So this is brand new. Before you couldn't, you could just put your information in and that was it and you were stuck. So you can get a jump start on things for your tenant, and this will also get them sort of pinged. The system will start pinging them like, hey, we need some more information. So they have up here the list of things that you need to know before you put in the pre-application, all stuff that I think most of you should have. Date of birth might be the one, but if you're using a rental application, it should have that on there. So this is what you have to get the application pre-started on behalf of your tenant. If you have not gotten your meaning the landlord's information up into the portal, the first thing you need to do is fill out a W-9 for whatever entity or person owns the rental property, and you need to upload that into the system. So the information in the W-9 is what they use to key your account and how you're able to then go in and set up your account. So it's based on the W-9 name entity name and the last 4 digits of either your social security number, if that's what's on your W-9, or your EIN or TIN number for like an entity, LLC or corporation. So if you haven't uploaded the W-9, you have to do that first before you can even get into the system. Once your W-9 is uploaded, then you can get in and you can create your landlord portal account. You can pull in other entities underneath you. So if you're a property management company that manages for a bunch of different landlords, you can pull them into one login account. So you can see everything right there. If you're a landlord that owns multiple buildings and different LLCs, you can pull all of those into your same account. So you don't have to have 12 accounts. You can have them all in one place. And as tenants come into the system and apply, the two accounts get linked. So you can see, and then you can, once your tenant's information is in there, so when they've done their side of things, there's some questions that you as a landlord have to answer about that particular tenant. And when that's done, then the application keeps moving through. In the landlord's portal, and I'm sorry I can't show the landlord's portal because you have to actually have an account to get set up. I don't have a dummy account to show everybody. There is a walkthrough in pictures, and I know there is a video version of this coming. It's just, it hasn't been made live yet, so it will actually walk you through in the portal what it looks like, but you'll be able to see the payments that have been made and are scheduled for which tenants. So it's a lot cleaner than like RHSP, where you just would get like, this money has been deposited in your account, and sometimes you didn't know which tenant it was for. This is going to make it a lot easier to track what is unpaid and which ones have been paid. So this 10-page document right now is very good in terms of what does this look like when I get in? How do I do certain things? What information do they need? And what do landlords have to attest to when they're, or agree to when they're participating in this program? There's like 4 things. You have to say the property is in compliance with code. And if the property actually isn't in compliance with code, there is actually money in this program to help make repairs so it becomes in compliance with code. So, you know, just don't think like, oh gosh, something needs to be fixed and now I can't participate. There's a way to work through that. But property is in compliance with code, that you agree to not increase the rent while you're receiving the benefit. I will say with a little asterisk, because there is some exceptions to that, but generally can increase the rent. You agree that you will investigate weatherization programs. So, you know, that could just be following up with one of the weatherization programs to say, can I have some more information? And then sort of the final attestation is that you agree to not evict the tenant for non-payment of rent. So it's non-payment of rent only for the period of time that you are receiving the rent benefit from the program. Again, I'm going to say with a little asterisk, because I know that Vermont State Housing Authority is working on how to handle the situation where, say, there's a pending case for non-payment of rent, your tenant applies, maybe you're not going to get all of the back rent. You know, what happens with that pending case? So it's not, you may not have to dismiss the case. It's not necessarily going to look like RHSP, whereas if you take the money, you're just can't do anything else forever and ever. There's some of this is still getting worked through.
We've got actually go ahead, please.
One more thing, and then we can jump into questions. The other thing to keep in mind about this VERAP program, if you as a landlord decide, I don't want to be bound by these certifications or these attestations or these requirements, you can say no. It's a voluntary program. You do not have to participate. I will just let you know there is a mechanism within this federal law for the program to send money that the tenant's approved for directly to the tenant. So if you say, nope, I'm not going to participate and the tenant qualifies, the program will send that money directly to the tenant. The tenant is supposed to then pay you. And in order for them to get future payments from the program, they have to show that they did pay you. So if they do the, I think what a lot of landlords are like, oh, well, the tenant's just going to take the money and they're not going to pay me. They're not going to be able to get any more money from the program. So that'll work once if that's what they end up doing. So I don't think that we may not see a whole lot of that because there's not going to be more money for the tenant if they do that. So there is a mechanism here for that rent money to still come to you if you say, I don't want to participate in this program for a lot, everybody's got reasons why they maybe don't want to do those certifications. So just, be aware that that is sort of part of the universe here with this program.
Yeah, very interesting to say the least. We've got actually a couple questions. One's,
Sure.
I'll share my opinion, then I'll try to respect that and cork it. Joan, and thank you, Swan, thank you for attending today. VERAP, is the program working well? Are landlords actually receiving rent assistance grants? Where do landlords call to get assistance for processing? I've personally heard this has definitely been more challenging than our last program.
Yes. Yeah, it absolutely has, hands down. And part of that is because it's so much more complicated. So if you saw the 2-page RHSP application from last year, there was no documents required. Like it was just, here's the form, here's my W-9, here's my direct deposit, and the program would pay you. This requires confirmation that the person's the landlord, that there's an actual lease or agreement between the parties, what the rent is, and then there's a whole bunch of income requirements for the tenants. So they have to show either their 2020 tax return, they have to show pay stubs if they're not using their tax return, they have to show all documented proof of income. So there's a lot more steps to this. There has been roughly $2 million that's already gone out the door under this program since it launched. 25-ish hundred households that have received benefits under the program. And that was all sort of before there was a big advertising push and the program was made public. So money is going out the door. The Housing Authority is making weekly payments. So the biggest holdup in processing and getting payments out the door is getting the tenant, all the tenant documentation and items in so they can be qualified under the program guidelines. That's what's causing a lot of the delays. So it's just an unfortunate, it's just the way this program is. And so that's what's causing a lot of the delays in payments is not getting, and in sort of tenant's defense, it is sort of clunky to work through the tenant portal, and they're trying to make changes. They're trying to make it smoother, more user-friendly. As I kind of keep joking a little bit, with a program of this size, if it had launched super smoothly and everything had worked perfectly, I would have been like, so what did we do wrong? Because there's always some sort of hiccup. There's always something that needs to get tweaked or fixed. And, the best I can say for folks is be patient, read through the website so as a landlord, what documents do you need to have all together to be able to do your part. Might be worth reading through the tenant side. If you have tenants that you're working with, help them. I have a couple of landlords who are setting up office hours and they're letting their tenants come in who want to apply. They're helping them scan documents in, they're helping them navigate the portal, they're helping them get stuff uploaded. They are there also assisting. If you as a landlord don't want to do that, very shortly we are going to have a bunch of navigators. So any of the homeownership centers are going around the state, there's 5 of them, are going to have people who are specially trained to help tenants gather their documents, get them uploaded into the system. We're going to see the same thing at a lot of the libraries, at the OEOs, and there's going to be a lot of resources to try to help tenants get things together. The Landlords Association can help on the landlord end, if you need help scanning or have some questions about the portal. But the first line of defense for everybody is, if you have questions about the actual program itself, is to call the call center. So there's a special dedicated call center just for this program that knows how all the behind the scenes stuff. They can see application status, they can see all that. I can't see all of that, my organization can't see all of that. So that's the first place to go. If you run into snags with them, then please reach out to us. We do have the ability to sort of ratchet problems sort of up the line of command to have somebody take a look to see what's happening. Things like landlords not seeing all of their entities in the system, or the wrong tenant is linked to their account. So it's, there's going to be hiccups. One of the things that you can do to make this go as smooth as possible is make sure your tenant knows how much back rent's owed. Send them a ledger so they can see it. Make sure they know who the actual owner entity is, right? Who's the entity that's on your W-9 that's going in the system? You'd be surprised the number of tenants that don't know. They just think it's, Joe Smith, but really it's, Smith Properties LLC is the actual landlord. And maybe that's even what it says in their lease, but they write their check to Joe Smith every month. And so they're looking for Joe Smith in the landlord portal and they're not finding it. So make sure they know which entity they should be looking for and searching for and linking to. And then just make sure everybody's on the same page about what the monthly rent is. This one's sort of a surprising one to me, but just make sure they know.
So we've got and thank you as always. We've got a very interactive group today. So thank you very much, everybody, for the questions. Always makes it a lot more interesting. Diana, and I'm assuming it's Diana Benoit, great to have you on. What if my client filed for eviction for non-payment in August? Is there a program to help out there, or to help them? I think it's the type.
If they're willing to take all of the back rent and have the case dismissed, there may be. So the best advice I can say in a situation like that is if the landlord has an attorney, have that attorney reach out to me, because I want to put them in contact with the folks that may be able to help them get that resolved. There still may be a mechanism to cure court cases like that if the landlord's willing to take money in exchange for dismissing the court case. So yes, maybe.
Excellent. We got another one, Laura Wilson. Once again, I have a few residents with future rent payments approved. Do you know how the future rent payments are managed? I believe from last time, we're going to be able to go in and actually see the schedule. Is that correct?
You are. So here's the upside to this new program. RHSP had to reapply every single month that the tenant missed. You do not have to do that with VERAP. So if the tenant's been approved, depending on how they've been approved, right? So if they were approved with their 2020 taxes, you're just going to every month get rent check or rent deposit from Vermont State Housing Authority, and it will show in your account that the rent's been paid for that tenant. If the tenant got income qualified on their pay stubs or non-tax return information, they're pre-qualified for 3 months. So you would get 3 months worth of payments, and then the tenant has to come back in and re-qualify on income for another 3 months. But you as a landlord, once you're in your system and you've signed off, there's not anything else. You don't have to keep reapplying. So that is one upside to this version of the program compared to the last one.
The next question, how does the landlord find out if the tenant has qualified?
You'll get notification from the system. So if you haven't set up your landlord account, you will get either an email from the program if the tenant had your email address, or you'll get something in the mail, an actual letter in the mail saying your tenant is approved or applied, qualified, you need to go do your landlord part of things to finish things up. But if your information's already in the system and you and the tenant have been linked, you're going to be able to see that. And again, it's usually an email notification that, hey, you need to go certify and finish up the landlord side of the application here. So.
And a very popular question, I'm sure, or hopefully not common, but well, can the landlord get any monies if the tenant doesn't cooperate?
No. There's no mechanism under this protocol. Again, remember, this was a program handed down by the federal government to us. So there is no mechanism for the landlord to be able to get funding this time if the tenant is not applying into the program. Which we may see some changes from tenants on their willingness to apply in now that we know the moratorium is coming to an end for non-payment in the middle of next month. So I'm hopeful. Realistically, with the amount of rental assistance money that has come into the state of Vermont, that tenants shouldn't be being evicted for non-payment of rent unless they've just totally ignored everything that's happening. There's funding there to be able to get the rent paid. I mean, it doesn't mean that you have to keep tenants for forever, even if they get the rent caught up. If they're causing problems or the lease is out, you can still pursue those evictions, even if you participate in VERAP. But we may see some, like I said, we may see some changed attitudes from tenants now that there is going to be a mechanism for landlords to move these non-payment cases forward. So we may see some applications into the program where tenants had previously said, I'm not going to do it. And if not, the courts are reopening to you. So you're going to be able to pursue an eviction case like you would have prior to COVID in this situation.
And this certainly is not legal advice because I'm not an attorney or financial planner. So I encourage you to talk with Angela before you execute. We've even had some property management clients that have had $5,000 buyouts turned away. My recommendation to our management team, go back to those tenants, drop that number. Because now that there's, this is being lifted, there's a different negotiating environment.
Yeah.
So,
and I will say the other component here is that there is, again, the money to move part of the program. So if the tenant really does want to leave and the landlord wants them to leave and everybody agrees that it's in their interest to leave, the tenant can still apply into the program, the VERAP program, and get approval for help with their next rental. So, the money that the landlord would spend out of pocket for cash for keys or a buyout, they may be able to redirect it for the tenant because they can get first, last security. There's actually a mechanism for them to get like moving truck paid for, turn on costs for utilities at their new place. Like there's some other things available to them. But again, they have to apply into the program to do that. What we've also been seeing is that if tenants want to move in that situation, sometimes they're opting to then also pay the landlord where they're leaving to get a good landlord reference. So there are some other creative avenues to take right now with all of this, but again, folks have to apply into these programs. Tenants have to apply in. So.
And again, we've had a really interactive group. We've got about 6 minutes left. If anybody wants to ask any questions, I encourage you to do so. Angela, with that being said, I got a quick question popped in my head.
Yeah.
If you're called for a reference, is there anything that you would recommend to avoid additional liability, yet at the same time, remember folks, what goes around comes around. So hopefully nobody on this session is giving great references for less than great tenants.
So my recommendation to landlords about references is always be honest, but stick to things that can be verifiable, right? That are facts and can be supported, and to stay away from opinions, because the opinions are the ones that could potentially get you into trouble. But always, when you're providing a reference, is if you were the landlord making the phone call, what would you want to know? And what kind of answers would you want to be receiving about this person? It is also okay to say, I can't comment, or you have to call my attorney. If you are calling on references and you get something like that, that should be a red flag that perhaps to do a little more digging and to see what other information you can find. And I will say with a third comment about references, make sure you're talking to the actual landlord. We've seen a little bit of an uptick in tenants not providing their actual landlord, or maybe giving the landlord's name, but the phone number goes to not the landlord.
And you might ask some red herring questions if you have a concern, like, so how was Brian, Brian's waterbed ever create an issue? If the person says no, well, clearly, it's there. Two suggestions I would make is, one, try to use the same questions almost every time, so there's not any questions of fair housing. And two is with humor, although I'm less involved in the operations, we had a great property manager, Dan Hogan. I would tell people when they call for references, if I can't remember them, it's probably a good tenant, because I can remember the bad ones. The other thing I'll throw out, and another reason why, once again, to join the Apartment Owners Association is, I think 5, 6, 7 years ago, the Vermont court system stopped reporting evictions to the credit bureau.
They did, but in 2020, the court system has launched a completely online records checking, and you can now, for free. So Vermont Court Search has gone away because we just could not compete with the judiciary for information. So you can actually go and search all civil court records in the state of Vermont in an online platform now, by name, and get quite a bit of information from that. So, and also Google is your friend. It's amazing how much information is available out on Google by just doing a name search. Sometimes a name search with VT after it, because then if it's a common name, you may get somebody that's not the person you're trying to search. But you can also do that for landlord reference, right? No harm in putting the landlord's name in to see what contact information comes up and does it match what's in the application, just to make sure you're calling the actual landlord.
Yeah, my personal suggestion: Google, Facebook, Instagram, and the court system, and a credit bureau. Respecting that, we have one last one here.
Sure.
Can you share the website for address for eviction records? I'm assuming that new portal.
I can't, let me see if I have it up on this computer and can get it for folks real quick.
And we can't stress enough while she's looking at for it. We really appreciate everyone participating today. Again, my name is Brian Armstrong, the CEO of KW Vermont, as well as Strongwell Property Management and Strongwell Real Estate Team at KW. We've got an amazing attorney, Angela Zakowski, and it's been an interesting few months for sure. And if you got any last minute questions, we've got just another minute or two. And as always, we appreciate the participation.
Okay, so this is what the site looks like for the judiciary for the public portal. So publicportal.courts.vt.gov/portal. And this will get you in. Smart search. And you can search by last name, first name. You can search by actual case number. It's a little clunky. You may have to try a couple of things, a couple different names. So if you do like that little star thing will catch you everything. It's probably going to tell me there's too many records.
Well, and Angela, while you're
Yes.
doing that,
So
we had
200. But so it will tell you the type of case. Under each sort of name, you can click in and get sort of what type of case it is, what the status is. So you can see there's a lot of information here that you can get now with this. So
I think our last request, Angela, is for you to put your contact information into the Q&A.
sure.
And for anybody who's trying to reach Strong Will Real Estate at Cape Vermont, visit us on Facebook at allburlingtonhomes.com or on the web, and also Strong Will Property Management. Angela, I can't stress enough, I've really enjoyed collaborating with you, and I really appreciate all you're doing for property owners' rights, particularly landlords who are oftentimes not as appreciated as we deserve today.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I thank you everybody for coming today. We are going to take a couple months of break with this series. So we are going to take July and August off, just to give us a little break, give everybody time to sort of regroup. I will have a better update in September of like, what are we seeing in the courts? Like, what's the timing? What's the processing? And I believe we are going to try to get a panelist in for September or October. We'll see how things are going. There may be enough COVID related stuff in September to do a update just with that, but get somebody from fire safety to come in. So we've done lead paint, we've done fair housing. Let's get, fire safety folks in to talk about what's going on in sort of their world and things that you should be aware of.
Excellent. Folks, thank you very much. Angela, thank you very much.
Thanks,
Stay
Brian.
safe, stay healthy. And remember, what you want to say is probably not what you should say. Diplomacy will get you far further with your tenants and buyout agreements or assistance with this than telling them what you want to say.
Exactly. So thank you everybody for coming today. And again, we'll get this recording up on the Vermont Landlords Association YouTube channel so you can watch it again or share it with folks who weren't able to attend today.
Hey, thank you so much.
All right.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you.